a sceptical kind of eye. We just sort of discussing earlier about that there's a scenario called the Rendlesham forest UFO encounter that happened in Suffolk in 1980, I believe. And that's just recently come out. Now, when that first came out, there's a massive incident because there was reputable military personnel there from the UK and America, and it was even taped as well, on audio tape, and you could hear the officers' voices. They were describing what they were seeing, and it was completely genuine. You could hear it. You could hear the atmosphere, the fear, their emotions, what they were describing. But now they've released it, they're kind of slanting it that, someone's come forward and said they were making a hoax on that day with flashing headlights, that kind of thing. And it was just recently broadcast on BBC News, I believe, last night. And I think they were doing a pretty good job of trying to poo-poo the whole thing. And they kind of underestimated their last guest, who completely went against their negative slant on it and was very for that this was a real scenario. And you could see that, well, from what I understand, they were shocked that he was literally agreeing that this could have been a real event. And from what I understand, they kind of binned it and it hasn't been on the air since. So I just wondered if you had any more information on that from your vantage point.
Well, my dear friend, I have to say that there have been very many soil test samples of that area after the event and subsequently, and that it actually threw up some very different calculations, some very different signposts, if you like, far beyond what was actually expected at the time for there not to be an event. So that meant to say then that even though some parts of the piece have been either redacted or have been moved or displaced in a sense, simply with some very important parts taken out. For example, I understand that not only was it that these different beings, these different people who were involved in it, military people who actually witnessed it, but they were also able to touch as well. And this had meant that they were fully cognizant of what they were made of, that it was in fact of no material of a like which they had ever encountered before or since. There is also a situation statement of fact, if you like, that with regard to this is not the first time, is and will not be the last. There are many situations, both within the physical vehicle of the Earth itself and interactivity with you as human beings, physical human beings, but also within many other different situations to do with, for example, interactivity with aircraft, with different situations, altercations with pilots of very many different kinds of aircraft. The Rendlesham situation is just simply one of many. I am so pleased in many respects that the people who were involved in it were so reticent and really argued the point as well, to do with all of the facts which surrounded it.
Yeah. So what are the true motives of the British government releasing these files? I mean, what do they aim to achieve on that?
Well, they're trying to make it diminished, are trying to make it so that it actually means a lot less. So it becomes, in its final estimation, to be made like a child's thing, so that these people, even though they are well cognizant, well versed militarily, actually know nothing, and so ply upon this whole facet that even these minds can be duped into thinking that they've been in the presence of something they can't understand, when in actual fact nothing was there or existed whatsoever, is a ridiculous ploy for those who are in seats of power on your side of life and present government to feel that that would work. I simply do not understand it as a spirit entity, first and foremost as a spirit having my existence at this present time. Although I have to say, I do see it almost every day within many different minds on your side of life, how they would try to ridicule one situation because they favour another.
So basically, by releasing this information, they take the mystery out of it. So they're kind of putting it to bed, if you like.
Hopefully, that's the point, yes.
But they're releasing it at a time where, you know, there's a huge momentum building in disclosure, where more and more people are like thirsty for this kind of information, and people are not fools anymore, are they, on this subject? So there's an awful lot of researchers now pushing for this to come out properly, you know.
Yeah, I agree, my dear friend, but perhaps you should tell them.
Well, tell the government.
To be listening, dear friend.
Yeah.
I think that it's very much a case of wrong-footedness and ignorance on the part of many people for their thinking that simply by releasing this, then it will actually just simply go away.
So I guess one of the things that a lot of people think, and I think this too, is you think, well, if there are good ETs out there and we really want this out in the open, then why can't one of them just show themselves, and then, you know, lots of people see it? And I know, actually, why I'm saying that, I know that's already happened in Mexico, where, you know, hundreds, if not thousands, have seen many UFOs up in the sky.
Yes, and Phoenix. True,
and the Phoenix Lights, that's correct, yeah. But I guess what you want is in a country like the UK, you know, to sort of peer over London, you know, in rush hour, and then everyone look up and go, that's not a weather balloon, that's not swamp gas. Do you know what I mean? But yes. in Mexico, they seem to be, it's just, they're quite blasé about it now, aren't they? It's like, oh yeah, we see UFOs all the time. Their government doesn't really cover it up as much as anybody else's.
No, what would be the point in covering it up when half of them have seen them themselves?
Yeah.
It would be like the pot calling the kettle black.
Yeah, that's correct, yeah. So a lot of these sightings that they're seeing in Mexico, I mean, are they E.Ts that literally are saying, look guys, we're here, we want you to see us. You know, we've got a vested interest in you, you know, knowing that we exist. Or
yes, absolutely so. No, that's the point, really. Within that particular group.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily meaning that it's the same group that are interacting throughout the planet. That's my point.
Just wonder why they can't come here into the UK.
Yes, after all, there are surely a large collection of people who would, given an appointed time, be readily happy and willing, waiting to be able to be greeted by them.
Yes.
Yes, I understand that, but the point is, friend, it's actually too dangerous still.
Yeah, I understand that. I know that there's obviously, you know, there's military interests that do not want this to come out, and they will attack and probably cause more harm to civilians by doing so. I mean, this actually leads on to something else as well, and that's the crop circle situation. Because every time I've been down to see the crop circles, we've experienced helicopters that come in and fly over the formations. And a photographer who was with us took a photo, and there was no markings on his helicopter. It was black, but there's no markings on it. And it just seemed that every time we go there, the military or the Air Force seem to be taking an interest in these things. And you know, like I say, I know that some could be fake, but I've done some research, and there's a really good DVD that I watched a couple of weeks ago with some very good scientific evidence that was really pushed the envelope towards being ET created, or not of this earth, or not by humans anyway.
Yes, I understand that. But the point is as well, dear friend, that you have to understand as well that these situations are, sometimes they are created by those in the spirit world. And
really?
They use plasmic balls to do it with.
Wow. That's just as good.
Yes, quite so. And I understand then people would say, well, why don't spirits materialize to us? Well, simply because oftentimes it's very, very difficult to do that. You have to understand that when you live in the physical world reality, it's of a certain specific vibration. And for us in our side of life, it's actually very difficult to move to that vibration so that we can be seen, which is why it is that we use plasmic balls or some other such apparatus that allows us to perhaps show just a small part of ourselves, because it takes a great deal of energy to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And sometimes I understand that different groups are able to use and manipulate certain conditions to do with electromagnetic and various forms of wave technology that exists purely and simply because of the gravitational field of the Earth, and mixed with